Hi guys, Miss P here. I've got my water, my brushes, my paper towel, and I'm going to use this art kit here with the pucks. And we're going to start off I'm going to show you a technique called a flat wash, and then a lifting technique, a graded wash, and a variegated wash. That'll be the video for today. You can try that out. I'm going to use my flat brush. Whoops, sorry about the bounce there. Okay, I'm going to use my flat angled brush actually. You may not have one this large, but anything will do. And I'm going to choose a color. So I'm going to choose blue. So I'm adding a little water to the actual paint, but I can put some of this color here so that I could see how transparent it is. And what we want to be sure to do is we really want to make sure that we're not using it too thick. If we use it right out of here and not too much water, we're going to get a really thick, dark color. And watercolor should be transparent and built up in layers. So some of the techniques I'm showing you are some of the techniques that you'll be using to build up a painting. And then you'll be familiar with these terms and you'll know what they do and where they can work, okay? So I'm adding a little pigment there. I'm going to add a little bit more water, like this. You can test it out on a sheet of paper or even on your paper towel here. Just kind of say, oh, that looks like pretty good color. Maybe a little bit more water here. Okay. A flat wash is basically a flat color right across the paper. Might work really well with sky or water if you're doing a landscape, or just flat areas of color. All right, so just gonna go in and I'm gonna start at the top. I probably could have actually added more. That looks a little bit too transparent. I'm gonna start at the top, try and control my edges, and then I'm gonna overlap and bring that down. And what you can actually do is you can tilt your work area a little more. Tilt your sketch pad, like so. Once in a while, continue to get paint. And like I said from the first video, this isn't the best paper to use, but if that's all you have, at least you're still learning how to do this. So sometimes I even go back up. If I feel like there's a little bit of dripping, I can take some of that water out on my paper towel and I can slurp some of that up. Like that, okay? Now, it's floating on the paper right now, and it will eventually settle and dry into a flat color. I also showed you that I was going to, or told you I was going to show you how you can lift paint. So you can lift paint a few different ways. I'm going to take my round brush, make sure it's clean, and I'm going to get all of the moisture out of that brush. I don't want to kill the brush. I want to just gently squeeze it in between the paper towel. And then what I could do while it's still wet is I can like slurp it up. I always make that noise. Like let's say I want to make clouds. I can just start lifting with my brush, rinse it again because there's pigment on there, dry it again, and just start lifting it. You can lift once the paint is dry. It's just a little bit different technique. The other thing you can do is you can take a paper towel or a tissue, and while it's wet, you can carefully, never scrubbing the paper, carefully lift some of that color. And now I'm creating like these wispy clouds. See? So you can do it in different, if you use different types of brushes, get different shapes of lifting, you can create some cool textures. You can lift that way. Starting to dry down here actually, so it's not lifting as much. There we go. Blot that out, and then you let that dry. So you just learned two techniques already, flat wash and a lifting. The next one is called a graded wash. A graded wash is when you want the color to be darker on top and then slowly get a little bit lighter. Again, could be a sky, could be water, so that you're seeing that the atmospheric perspective, it starts getting a little bit lighter. We can use blue again since I've already dirtied that up. And it's almost the same process the way we start it. Add a little bit of water, a little more pigment. And what this time I'm going to do is instead of continually dipping into the paint, I'm going to dip my brush into the water. So the first one is the pure blue. Okay? Go right across like that. I'm going to rinse my brush. Now it's just water. So I'm going to pull that pigment down. Maybe a little too much water. Again, another clean sweep. Rinse my brush again and pull that down. You can see that it's drawing. If you overlap it like that, you can see that it draws the color from the top. And because I'm tilting the paper, it's starting to drip down the page like that. So you see that's quite a lot stronger than the rest of it. So if I didn't like how dark that was, I could go over that again and repeat the process. Rinse my brush, pull down that pigment like so. So you can see it's a little bit different. Artists use this a lot when they're making a sky in a landscape painting. So you can kind of let it dry sitting up like that for a bit. And if it starts to puddle down here, you can make sure you're patting your brush and just kind of slurp that up. Just like that, okay? Now the variegated wash is when you work, it's another wet on wet technique. I can use another color now. Let's say I want to use green. And while it's wet, I can add a little paint. I'm not like brushing it hard with my brush. I'm touching it and just watching that color flow. And because you're working on a wet surface, you can't control it. But that's the fun of it. You can't control. I'm adding a little bit of lighter value color of yellow on top of blue, and it's tending to float on top. It's not quite mixing. It's not turning into a green. It's almost pushing that blue away. This is actually so fun. You could probably do a few of these and just have a really good time watching what the color does. As soon as it stops this bursting, like the edge kind of almost like fireworks, once it stops doing that, it's probably because your surface is no longer damp and you're no longer working on a wet on wet. Now I use that still pretty watered down. Let's say we take the water out of my brush and I go in and I get some kind of thicker paint there. Let's see what happens. It still does that little sunburst, like that little firework, right? But you can get some darker colors. Now where might you use this? Well, you might use this as you're building up the painting, maybe flowers or leaves. You want to start like this and then you put the detail on later. So the stages in watercolor painting, it starts off very loose and then it can get a little bit tighter with some of the other techniques I'm going to show you later. So I can even go ahead and go, you know what? I don't like too much green there. I'm going to use that technique number 2 and lift some of that. So you can combine the techniques together like that, okay? So you just learned 4 techniques: flat wash, lifting, graded wash, and variegated wash, which is a wet on wet. So next movie, we'll learn a couple more techniques.